to us for your willingness to turn on the video screen during the course of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our agenda today, let us hear the Indonesian national anthem, Indonesia Raya.
Sekarang lihat setelah simultaneous ada kata.
Okay. Good morning from Indonesia for all our honorable guests from Australia, Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning, Education and Science Counselor, Australian Government Department of Education, Skills and Employment, or DESI. Also, we would like to welcome all the speakers and all the participants from Australia Embassy in Jakarta, Department of Education, Skills and Employment, or DESI, and some universities representatives from Australia. And also our honorable guest from Indonesia, Professor Aris Junaidi, the Director of Learning and Student Affairs, and all the representatives from Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Republic of Indonesia, and some universities representative from Indonesia. Sure thing, we would like to send our gratitude to all the invited guests who has attended via video conference and live stream YouTube. The honorable ladies and gentlemen, in the current pandemic situation which presents new challenges to the world, surely we have to adapt, especially in the field of education today. Currently, one solution so that the learning process can continue is to use educational methods through online learning. Increase the capacity of the academic community in the ability to create learning materials or content on an ongoing basis is the main focus at this time. Therefore, today we are going to hold Australia-Indonesia virtual online higher education policy dialogue with the topic Assessment, Evaluation, and Integrity in Online Learning.
Yes.
To begin this agenda, let us hear an opening remarks from the Director of Learning and Student Affairs, Ministry of Education, Culture, Research and Technology, Republic of Indonesia, to Professor Aris Junaidi. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Ratia. The honorable keynote speaker and guest from the Department of Education, Skill and Employment, Australian Embassy, the honorable speakers and guests from university in Australia, the honorable speakers and guests from University in Indonesia, and all the participants from higher education service institution or L2 Dikti and universities in Indonesia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning to all of you.
Warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
And very good afternoon for Australian time. First of all, I would like to thank the Department of Education, Skill and Employment, as well as with the Australian Embassy in Jakarta, especially Mrs. Elizabeth Campbell-Downing and Mrs. Claudina for the tremendous support for this event. I also want to greet Mr. Stephen Jones, the Director of Partnership Development Team, the Department of Education, Skill and Employment, and Mrs. Vijanti Kalam as our policy officer. And of course, for the speaker from Australia University, Mrs. Christine Slate from University of Queensland, Mr. Michael Henderson and Mr. Chris Aryan, both from Monash University, Mr. Michael Ewing from University in Melbourne, and of course, for our panelists, Mrs. Jasmine Thomas from University of Southern Queensland. So nice to have you here. And this is make me miss Australia. Since I live in Australia, it's in total about 11 years. And this is, I think I met some of them when I'm posting in Canberra during 2019 up to 2013. And secondly, thanks to the speaker from Indonesia, Mr. Dean Wahyudin from Indonesia University of Education, and also Mr. Eka Pramono Adi from Malang State University, Mr. Gadot Hertono from University of Indonesia, Mr. Sunu Wibi Rama from Gajah Mada University, and our moderator for this webinar, Mr. Laki Cahyana Subadi from Ciputra University. Thank you for all. This webinar was initiated by collaboration spirit between the Australia Embassy and the Director General of Higher Education, and some of our concern regarding the massive education transformation during the COVID-19 pandemic. This webinar series has been started in March, and the topic of this webinars starting from how to design, and then how to deliver, and next, how to developing lecturer in terms of online learning. And now we reach for our fourth topic, and also will be our last area of Australia Indonesia Policy Dialogue Series in 2021, which is about assessment, evaluation, and integrity in online learning. We do hope that the four topics delivered on this webinar series able to leverage our understanding and improving our online learning quality. With the presenters, speakers from both countries who have great experience conducting online learning, we believe all participants will gain valuable knowledge. Since 2014, Directorate General of Higher Education have promoting the use of online platform and MOOCs, massive open online courses, as part of learning activities. We routinely organize training and technical guidance on the use of online learning platforms, but this is still not able to build higher education awareness to start online learning on campus. The ministry has also issued regulation governing distance education, but this has not been able to increase the interest of university to start building the basic technology-based learning infrastructure. The awareness of the importance of technology-based learning infrastructure during this pandemic, at the time when online learning became the only alternative to deliver their courses. Many universities hasn't prepared for this transformation. Hence, various efforts have been made to support this online readiness by Director General of Higher Education. Including, we have prepared on an online learning system, which we call SPADA, Sistem Pembelajaran Daring, and conduct training for lecturer regarding online learning and how to prepare online learning material. Last year, for example, we have been trained around 100,000 lecturers for this online learning. Today's webinar topic, which is about assessment, evaluation, and integrity in online learning, is one of important component to evaluate the effectiveness of learning activity and to find out the achievement of learning outcome from courses that have been conducted. We hope that in this last series, we can share the best experiences from universities in Australia and universities in Indonesia regarding the implementation of online learning through the experts who have joined us this morning. For our colleagues from Australian Embassy, allow me to express our deepest gratitude for this collaboration initiative, and we look forward for our next collaboration. And also, we do hope that our 4 series that we have done will be documented in the very book, so that means we have can read and everyone can learn about our activities until today. And by mentioning Basmalah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, allow me to express we declare that webinar, assessment, evaluation, and integrity and online learning is officially open. Once again, thank you to everyone for your support and happy joining this webinar. Billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Professor Aris Junaidi. Well, ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, we already provided the link on the chat box to write down any questions from all the participants, and we are going to discuss it on the question and answer session later. Okay, after we heard the opening remarks from Indonesia, from Professor Aris Junaidi, now we are going to hear an opening remarks from Australia to Miss Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning as an Education and Science Counselor, Australian Government Department of Education, Skills and Employment. The screen is yours.
Terima kasih, Ratia. Thank you so much, Professor Aris, for the very warm welcome to us all. On behalf of the Australian government, I would like to sincerely thank Kemdikbudristek for their continued collaboration on this webinar series that likewise we think is a very valuable undertaking for both of our higher education sectors. Very much thank you, Professor Aris, for your time and your team for working with us in making this series happen. As always, I would like to also thank all 406 participants that are on the Zoom at the moment, and I know many more are on YouTube as well. Thank you so much for giving your time to us today, for wanting to learn more about this topic. We've got a great range of experts from Indonesia and Australia to be your speakers and panelists today. Those are from Universitas Negeri Malang, from Universitas Gadjah Mada, Universitas Indonesia, and Universitas Pendidikan Indonesia. And on the Australian side, from Monash University, the University of Melbourne, University of Queensland, and University of Southern Queensland. And I know that we're all keen to hear what they have to say on this topic of assessment, evaluation, and integrity in online learning. Throughout this series of webinars, we've discussed many of the different aspects of online higher education design and delivery. And I think a lot of this has been from a student or from an institution perspective. And today's topic, which is our final topic in this series, also relates to institutions and to students, but I think it also relates to external stakeholders of online learning. And that's because assessment is the way that we evaluate a learner's progress, their understanding, their achievement. And we know that there are many ways to assess a student's learning and development, but the integrity of that assessment is central to how end users of qualifications, like employers, are going to perceive the value of learning. Employers and other stakeholders rely on integrity in online learning, in assessment and qualifications, when making decisions about what they think of a qualification, whether they want to employ a particular graduate, or whether they want to partner potentially with a particular institution. And because of the pandemic, we've had to make a lot of changes. Our higher education institutions have had to change how they assess. And we know that this can create some risks, but there are also solutions to manage those risks. There are risks around the reliability of assessment, around the consistency and standardization of assessment. And we know that there can be opportunity for cheating and for plagiarism as well. But many institutions have seen this as the opportunity it is to innovate and create new approaches to assessment that make sense for the online learning environment. And today we're going to hear from our experts from Indonesia and from Australia on different ways, alternatives to face-to-face assessment, how we can engage online learners in assessment, and how to measure outcomes and achievements while also mitigating those risks in online assessment also. And I think only with integrity in our systems and processes are we going to build that trust of online learning. And that's definitely a goal of the Department of Education, Skills and Employment, and one that I think the ministry shares, that we want online learning to be trusted and to be accepted in our societies. In June last year, the Australian government announced that it would establish a new higher education integrity unit in our national regulator for higher education. And this unit looks at emerging risks and helps our higher education institutions to manage the threat through data analysis, through resources, and through communities of practice. And a particular focus that this integrity unit has had is at cheating, contract cheating in particular. That's looking at not just detection, how to find cheating, but also education and enforcement as well. And a number of resources have been developed for both students and our higher education institutions to help raise awareness of some of these integrity risks and to address the risk that is posed by cheating in our education system. So I think this will be certainly a topic that some of our speakers touch on. I look forward to hearing from the perspectives of these experts. I am not one of them, so I know I'm going to learn more today as well. And I hope that this is going to be a really useful final webinar for us all, sharing our experiences but challenges as well. Yeah, with that, I will hand over back to Ratia to start the webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Downing. We are going to the main agenda today, but before we continue, we would like to take a picture together. We would like to ask for your willingness to turn on the video screen, and I will count to 3, and the committee will take a screenshot, kind of a photo together by virtual, okay? Let us begin. 1, 2, 3. Should I say pause? Okay, once more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, I think it's enough. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to the dialogue session, which will be guided by our moderator, Head of Teaching and Learning Center in Structure of International Business Management, to Mr. Lucky Cahyana Subadi. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Rasia. Selamat pagi and good day, Bapak, Ibu, and ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi. Today we are synchronously going to have discussion about assessment, evaluation, integrity in assessment, as mentioned before. There are 3 topics that we are going, subtopics, that we are going to discuss in this, our agenda. Led by Indonesia and Australian speakers. The first one is alternative to face-to-face assessment. Second one, engaging online learners in assessment, and also detecting and addressing cheating in online assessment. All right, the first 2 speakers are from Monash University. Professor Chris Ryan, he is a Pro-Vice Chancellor academic. He is going to present on detecting and addressing cheating in online assessment. And also with him, Professor Michael Henderson, Professor of Digital Futures, Faculty of Education, is going to present alternative face-to-face assessment and engaging online learning in assessment. Both speakers will have 13 minutes to share, and the screen is yours. Professor Ryan.
Forgive me whilst I just work through the technology, my apologies.
It's all right.
And thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for this opportunity to present our learnings from Monash University and the pandemic that we have been running through. I will present for just a few minutes before turning to my colleague, Professor Michael Henderson. I think it is appropriate to start talking about Monash in terms and the COVID challenges that we have faced with assessment when we start thinking about the scale of the university. We have over 85,000 students, many of whom find themselves overseas just at this second. Additionally, we have international campuses, including a new campus that is opening in Indonesia as I speak, and we have over 9,000, approximately 10,000 of our Australian-based students who are based currently overseas. And despite all of this, we have to be able to provide, particularly for the expectations of our external accreditors, we have to be able to provide our students a consistent learning experience, and we have to be able to demonstrate that they have been able to meet the learning expectations that we have of them through our assessment. As you can imagine, COVID-19 has produced many challenges of assessment for us. Monash, though, has had a strategic plan for e-assessment dating back to 2017. E-assessment for us was an option that allowed us to have greater flexibility in the way that we could pose assessment of our students. It provided an improved student experience, students being, instead of relying on handwriting, being able to move backwards and forwards what they wanted to be able to demonstrate to us, and through the use of expert platforms that we have for them. And it allows us options for authentic assessment. Our platform has been co-developed with over 600 students and 100 staff, and Monash University has permanently moved away from paper-based exams to using this platform going forward. So it's been a significant investment. And as you can see from the graph that you have on the screen here, an investment that commenced before COVID. I have had colleagues at the university describe us as somewhat fortunate that we've had that thinking as we moved through to the current pandemic. We have had, of course, major changes even with that, with COVID-19. And our academic integrity is something that we have to make sure we have a multifaceted response as part of the entire learning community, which ensures that, in particular, students enshrine academic integrity and the value of that at their core of their learning and teaching, and understanding the benefits that come with that, so that their course is something which can be trusted by their future employers. So we have a number of technological and also community-based components, so including the use of lockdown browsers, so our students cannot do anything else when they're doing their assessment. We have online invigilation, and that online invigilation has predictive AI supporting our invigilators to be able to identify when students might be tempted to do the wrong thing when it comes to their doing their assessment, and being able to automatically create reports for our academics to be able to identify. We have alternative assessments where we work with our academics in the production of project-based assessments that might take 6, 12 or 24 hours, but are incredibly difficult to be able to seek external help. You really do have to rely on the fact that very much that the student themselves are doing that work. We do have watermarking on our assessments, which allows us with QR codes to be able to automatically check across a variety of websites whether students are uploading questions or their answers to confirm whether they're doing the right thing. And again, by automatically finding that, we can identify not only that it's our assessment, but indeed who the student is. And then we have learning modules for our students on the value of academic integrity, why it's so important to us as part of the learning community. Each of these are important in being able to restrict breaches of academic integrity, but it is equally important for us to undertake research of our students to understand why it is that they are tempted to breach academic integrity. And so that's partly what I'd like to talk to you about today. As part of that, I would just say that our exam conditions that we have provided, we've provided a complete suite of responses for our academics to use, which include invigilation and not, include open book and closed book, a wide variety of different assessment environments, which have been designed by each individual academic, but on the same platform, so that they are confident with the academic integrity that we have. Then we have looked at our exam experience, and the project has got local impact because it provides us a strategic direction as to what where we go next, and also, as we are doing now, a sector impact so we can report across multiple universities. And the report that I will be referring to, and that my colleague Michael Henderson will be referring to right now, was just been completed in semester 1. We've had 39,000 students. It's the sample size, and of those we've had students completing surveys about just slightly under 8,000 students completing the survey, which has over 119 items. I'm going to start by just focusing briefly on the platform, as I said, co-developed with our students. And then I'm going to turn to my colleague, Michael Henderson, who will talk about the student response in terms of where they might be tempted to breach academic integrity. As you can see, the co-development of these platforms is crucial to make sure that students have confidence in the ease of use of the platform. The experience and the academic impact is positive. They can see the benefits to that. And this has been part of a very considerable conversation across the university. But then we also note that a sizable proportion of students do have increased stress when they are doing online exams. And that doesn't seem to change regardless of whether the student is doing this remotely or doing this with us. I'll pause there and invite my colleague to continue.
So in addition to, thanks for that, Chris. But I want to say, so in addition to the data that Chris was showing, which is really helping us to understand the student experience, we obviously need to also understand their academic integrity behaviors and attitudes. And based on our research, it's becoming clear that online cheating is not rampant. So thanks. So for instance, we could start to look at some of the data, and in which case we can start to break down an understanding of who's cheating, how much are they cheating, who are they, what are the kinds of motivations. In this case, in this particular table, we're simply representing that 93% of the students reported they did not cheat. Less than 3% reported they did cheat, and there's also a proportion who preferred not to say. The interesting thing here really is that while this is telling us that the ratio is the percentage is small, we still clearly need to continue to be proactive in minimizing academic dishonesty. However, the study also reveals that the current measures are resulting in what seems to be low rates of cheating behavior, and that this data also helps provide us perspective in the face of really what we're seeing in the media as these claims of rampant cheating. So we need to keep these things into perspective. Now, when we look across the assessment security measures, we can also see that online supervision as a key security measure works. We can compare the supervision with supervised with unsupervised exams, for instance. And this is the benefit that we have of having such a large pool of data to be able to slice the data by. In this instance, we can see that exams that were supervised through camera, microphone, etc., is different from those that weren't. And there's a 5% difference. So students are 5% more likely to report not cheating during an online supervised, that's remote proctored exam. So, although that this exam security appears to work, so it's worthwhile to pursue, it's also interesting to note that all forms of cheating, different forms of cheating, are still apparent across all of those assessment security measures. The most common types that we came across were forbidden aids. So for instance, having some notes or using an app or a tool, try to hide these things, which of course our security measures pick up. Thank you for that. but also these different forms of cheating, although a very small proportion, all of these were represented across all of our assessment security types. So it didn't matter whether it was supervised or unsupervised, whether you had lockdown browsers, open or closed books, timed exams on or off campus, different forms, albeit very small numbers, but these different forms were still apparent. So where does that leave us? So since this security works, but it can't or doesn't at this stage completely eradicate cheating, we also need to consider the student motivations. And these motivations are complex. When we look, for instance, across three groups, we look at those who cheated and were not tempted, and those who did not those who did not cheat and were not tempted, those who did not cheat but were tempted. So we asked them, were you tempted, and how much you were tempted to cheat? And we look at the group also who are reported to have cheated some or more. And when we look across these groups, we can start to see some differences. For instance, what we can see is a difference, particularly in how much they think other students are cheating. So those who cheated believed twice as many students were cheating than those who did not cheat at all. So these differences give us an insight into the kinds of motivations. But if we dig down a little bit further and we start to ask students what the different factors were and the strength of those factors in their decisions, we can see that on the left and the right, there are a range of factors. And on the left are the factors that encouraged you to cheat. So we asked this of the people who cheated and the people who were tempted to cheat but did not cheat in the end. We asked them, what were the factors that influenced you? And they all, regardless of whether they cheated or not, they all came up with these 11 responses, and they were all well represented. But interestingly, when we look also at the other side of this diagram and the 10 factors that really came up in our data about discouraging cheating, we looked across the groups of those who cheated, those who did not cheat were tempted, and those who did not cheat and were not tempted at all. We can see some interesting differences. In particular, the first thing that is similar is that all of these factors were represented across all groups. But what is dissimilar or different was that those who did not cheat and were not tempted had indicated more of these factors at any one time, but also had a stronger conviction of their significance. So these factors were felt more strongly as being reasons to not cheat, as opposed to those who did cheat. The clustering of these factors and the interactions between these factors and sense of social norms is something that we're going to be continuing to pursue. So what this does is it leads us to some conclusions. And I'll hand it back to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Michael. And just very quickly, just a few conclusions there. Obviously, we have worked considerably to ensure that our assessment security is important, but not intrusive for our students. We understand that it adds stress and complexity at a time when we don't want the students to have that undue stress and complexity. We need them to focus on their learning. It is also unlikely to fully eradicate cheating. And we know that from historic paper-based exams, we always know that there are students, some very small proportion of students who are cheating. And the third thing that I would say is that we are taking the data that we have here and looking holistically at how we engage the conversation across our learning community to better ensure that we are preparing our students to understand academic integrity and also to design our security around that integrity to ensure that we can further minimise breaches of academic integrity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Chris and Professor Michael. There are things that we have a note here. The first one, technology can help the integrity of the assessment. And also we need to consider factors, especially motivation factors when we are doing the security on online assessment. So the second sessions will be led by Michael Ewing. He is an associate professor in Indonesian studies, convener of Asian studies, and he is from University of Melbourne. Michael Ewing is going to talk about alternatives to face-to-face assessment and engaging online learning in assessment. Professor Michael Ewing, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Pak Lucky. Let me share my screen. And okay, I hope that's working well. So thank you, and thank you particularly to the organizers, both from Indonesia and Australia, for putting on this event and for making this possible. I'm going to talk on very practical terms, I would say. I'm not going to be looking at final assessments, but thinking more in terms of formative assessment that might happen during the middle of the semester as you're moving through a subject. And I'm also going to give a very hands-on example of how in one subject that I co-teach with a colleague from linguistics, we moved our assessment from face-to-face to online and how we tried to maintain student engagement in that process. So first, just kind of thinking, what are the challenges when we all had to move to teaching online last year and continue to do so for most of us? The big challenge, of course, is that for both students and instructors, it reduces social interaction. And how can we find ways in an online environment to maintain that interaction between students and instructors? And really, that key focus on engagement, which is what I found to be very interesting in the topic that this webinar is looking at today. So producing engaged assessments in an online environment. This can be good for learning and also very good for student well-being. And so in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the features of engaging assessments. And then, as I said, I'm going to give you one example of moving an assessment from face-to-face to online. So first, some ideas around an engaging assessment, and I'm taking some of these key points from a report that was produced by Gregor Kennedy at the University of Melbourne, at the Melbourne Center for the Study of Higher Education. And he's also the Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic at the University of Melbourne. And I have a link there to the center, the Melbourne Center for Higher Education, which has quite a few resources, including this particular discussion paper, but also many other resources that are available to the public. So those of you attending the webinar might find some of these very useful. Excuse me. So some of the key components of engaging students in assessment. It's recommended to think in terms of interaction and how these interactions are organized. We have interaction between the learner and the instructor, of course, and you might think of this in terms of sort of traditional teaching of the instructor talking to the student, but interaction between learners is very important. And it's also very important to think about how learners interact with the content. And in terms of interacting, in terms of these interactions, we can think in terms of sort of direct instruction, the typical traditional teacher in front of the class lecturing sort of thing, moving along a continuum to a much more constructivist viewpoint, where you have the students actively engaged in their own learning, investigating, exploring, discovering things. And all of these different types are important, but in terms of engaging students, we're really wanting to move towards that sort of constructivist idea of assessment and assessment tasks. In terms of interactivity, in terms of that interaction that I was talking about, that's about who is interacting with whom. In terms of interactivity, this term we're sort of thinking about how are people interacting. And in a digital environment, we might think in terms of behavioral interaction and cognitive interaction. Behavioral is you've put your subject online, you're using some form of LMS, and a behavioral interaction with that format is where students go online, maybe watch a video, download a PDF to read. It's basically a way of accessing information online. Moving towards a cognitive type of interaction, this is where you're trying, again, to get students engaged. You're provoking students, trying to have online activities, things that they're interacting with digitally, in which they're actually analyzing, discussing, and responding to content. And again, we're wanting to aim for this cognitive sort of interactivity, but of course it will be supported by what might be called behavioral interactivity, where they are basically accessing material online at the same time. Also, learning design is important, and there are various kinds of engaging assessments that can be organized and presented in class, inquiry-based, simulation-based, peer-based. learning models. And these models are by no means exclusive of each other. They can be combined and interact in interesting ways. And I hope to show with the particular assessment that we used in this one subject, how all of these approaches to designing assessment can be integrated together to produce something that's very engaging for students, and in which they really learn something. And it actually is very, it's a really good way to assess what they've done and how they're progressing within the subject. So the specific subject that I teach with a colleague in the School of Languages and Linguistics at the University of Melbourne, it's a master's level graduate subject called Transcultural Communication at Work. We have students from across the Faculty of Arts, from Applied Linguistics, Translation Studies, Communication, International Relations, and many other programs who take this subject. And just to give you a sense of what this subject is about, I've pulled a few lines out of the handbook description of the subject, where we focus on transcultural communication at the intersection of cultural, linguistic, ethnic, and religious boundaries. Successful transcultural communication requires not only a shared language, but also strong intercultural awareness and skills. And the subject provides students with tools to achieve successful transcultural encounters in professional settings, and also crucially, how to think about these kinds of interactions critically and theoretically in various ways, as well as practical hands-on ways of dealing with transcultural communication. The students in the class, they're both domestic students from Australia as well as international students. And part of what we want them to do is to learn to work together, to work with students from different backgrounds. It's a very important way of learning skills in transcultural communication that augment the learning that they have through the case studies, theoretical analysis, lectures, seminar discussions, and that sort of thing. There's 3 assessment tasks that they do through the semester. Seminar presentations, in-class presentations, usually done in pairs with a discussion, a poster exhibition, which is done in small groups, and then a critical research essay that they complete as their final piece of assessment at the end of the semester, and that's done individually. The specific assessment that I want to talk about is the poster exhibition. And you can see here a picture from 2019, when we had the poster exhibition in real life. And poster exhibitions, as I'm sure you're all familiar with, are a common way of presenting information in large settings, for example, at conferences, but also in other professional contexts where people have posters displaying, for example, the results of some research, and you can move around the room talking to people about their research, looking at the various posters, interacting and engaging with people. And when we had these poster exhibitions prior to the pandemic in real life on campus, they were incredibly successful. The students were very, very highly engaged. We organized it as part of sort of experiential learning, as getting a sense of what it's like to present the results of your own research in this sort of context. We organized it like a conference. We had snacks, we had drinks. We invited the head of the Asia Institute one year, the deputy vice dean for graduate studies another year, to open it, to give it a real sense of an event that the students were engaged in. And last year then, with the pandemic and moving online, we were really struck with how can we recreate this incredibly engaging assessment that students really seem to like? How can we do that online? And that's what we have attempted to do. That's what we attempted to do, and I think very successfully in 2020. And we're going to be doing something similar again this semester in 2021. And so I want to talk to you about our digital poster exhibition, how we organize that. So the poster exhibition itself as an assessment task, students are asked to work in small groups, prepare a multimodal poster that explores one type of text that in terms of transcultural communication, and that their exploration, analysis, presentation should be grounded in theory and also suggest areas for further research. That's basically the outline of the assessment task. The groups produce their poster display of their research on the particular topic, where they were to pick some text, whether it's something written, a visual representation, maybe a scene from a movie, a YouTube clip, anything like that that demonstrates transcultural communication, and then analyze it. The poster exhibition was done in real time, where students could look at each other's posters, talk to the poster creators, often offer commentary and feedback. And then students would write up an individual critical response. And crucially, in that response, they're expected to push the project a bit further and can take into consideration and respond to the comments that they received during the exhibition. So it really integrates this, this engagement into the assessment, and it requires students to demonstrate how engaged they were in the project in the final write-up. And then the final mark is based both on the group work, the poster presentation, and the individual critical response, a combination of those two marks. And so that sort of gets around the issue that sometimes students complain in group work that some student will have done more work than another or not contributed equally, but they all get a chance to show their own best work in the critical response that they write as a write-up afterwards. So moving it online, the way we did it was students created their posters through using the app called Padlet, which some of you may be familiar with, but some of you might not be. So I'll show you how that works, because I think it's an extremely useful app for doing all kinds of very engaging student activities online. The poster exhibition was presented via Padlet Hub, and discussion was done live through Zoom breakout rooms. And I'll sort of show you how that happened again. The critical review is a conventional essay uploaded electronically on the LMS. So this is Padlet, for those of you who don't know it. You can sign up for free. For free, you can make a few, these so-called Padlets, visual displays of information. It is both in English, it is in Indonesian as well. If you want to sign up in Indonesian, that works. And I'm going to try to move to a web browser to show you, well, I might, let's see. Yeah, so hopefully this is clear now. So this is the hub for the exhibition last year. So on our LMS, one of the modules within that was the poster exhibition. And in that was this Padlet hub, which had all of the individual posters. And I can click here, we'll look at it and you'll get a sense of what it was like. So each group, you could access each group's poster via this hub. This was online. And during the exhibition, we were meeting by Zoom, and we created a breakout room for each individual poster. So each group had their own breakout room identified by breakout room number. And we had Zoom set up so that students could enter breakout rooms at will. We didn't assign them to their breakout rooms. They could move in and out of breakout rooms. Each group had to have one member in their breakout room at all times. And then students could travel around via Zoom into the different breakout rooms and then talk about the poster that they saw on the Padlet display with one of the people who worked on the poster. So it very successfully recreated that sense of a poster exhibition where you can move around a room, talking to different people, really engaging with people on topics that you found very interesting. And I'll just show you very briefly a few of the posters, just so you can see what, if you haven't ever used Padlet, you can see the kinds of things you can do. Basically, you can create different modules, upload images, make links to videos, and that sort of thing. And you can also leave comments. Most of the comments and engagement were happening.
Sorry, but Michael, your time.
All right, thank you.
Your time, but Michael.
Yeah, thank you. So I will just briefly show you one more example and then some conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you for the explanations, talking about formative assessment. The challenge is you are talking about interactions, how students interact, and also we need to consider how we design the learning and also assessment task. And you give the example how to use Padlet when you are doing the exhibition, digital exhibition. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next 13 minutes presentation will be done by Dr. Christine Slate. She is a senior lecturer, higher education, academic lead, assessment Institute of Teaching, Learning, Innovation, University. Dr. Christine is going to talk about detecting and addressing cheating in online assessment. Dr. Christine, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Lucky, and hello to everyone who's online and on YouTube. It's been very interesting so far what people have talked about in different aspects of online assessment, and mine is a little bit different too. So what I would like to talk to you about is addressing cheating in online in a bigger sort of perspective, and then
please unmute Miss Christine.
Miss Christine?
Sorry, something happened there.
Yes.
Do you want me to start again, or did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to talk about is addressing cheating from a design point of view from assessment, and also a little bit around detecting and investigation. So in the big picture, I just wanted to set the stage because we have some research, and I noticed that the people from Monash actually said this too, that even though there's talk that cheating online is rampant, I would agree with them from some of the research that has been done in Australian universities, and in particular Tracy Bretagg's large survey of nearly 5,000 students. That survey actually found that Australian students engage more in cheating with people they know. So when we have commercial contract or ghost writing services, they tend to go more to people that they actually have some relationship with. And professional services were not used so much for online cheating, but more for examination impersonation. And that's something I think as a sector we haven't really addressed yet. And we live in the comfort that the on-campus centralized invigilated exams were very secure, but students are telling us that they do actually cheat in exams. And while you think that the fully online, say, master's student or external student has plenty of opportunity to cheat, this research actually found that it was the social networks and the peer relationships of students on campus that fostered more cheating than those who were fully online. And then I was thinking about, well, what sort of examples of online assessment are we thinking about here when we're thinking of this topic? And of course, examinations are very, they're used a lot in Australian universities. So we do have to consider what would we do when we put examinations online. And I think during COVID, that was probably one of the big challenges for universities, swapping from the online, from the centralised invigilated to online exams. And at the same time, being able to provide equity for students that were actually living in the Northern Hemisphere around the world, so they didn't actually have to get up at 2 or 3 a.m. to do their exam. But there's plenty of other things that we can think about assessment design for online. Besides essays and projects, we have portfolios, and I think at the moment they're currently under examined, because portfolios can do a lot for academic integrity in the sense that you're monitoring students' progress over extended periods of time or during collaboration. So the academic or the educator can actually look in and see what's actually happening across the assessment points in a portfolio. And then, of course, we have teamwork. And I think that's one of the things during the COVID beginnings that was very difficult for academics to actually move to online. They weren't really prepared necessarily, unless that was one of their focus, to move teamwork or group work. And of course, we've had quizzes around for a long time, either through the LMS or some other way, which can provide some affordances. And reflective writing informs, that's interesting too, because in this research, this large survey, they found that it was more difficult to treat reflective writing from practicums or an experience that the students had had. So this is a paper that we were asked to write, myself with 2 colleagues. way back now in 2016, and our university was very concerned about what was happening with academic integrity. So we wrote a issues paper, which was really talking about what's happening in other places and what's literature writing about. And these are the 8 prongs that we came up with. And I guess while I'm talking around assessment, I want you to think more holistically, because you can see there from policy development through support, actually dealing with cases of academic misconduct, your structures, your process, the education of students and staff, and technical solutions, which there are some, along with assessment design, they all really have to be put in place together. So that takes time and it takes buy-in, but this is the approach that we took in trying to combat some of the academic integrity problems we were having with our students. And I guess this is another point, and I know we've all been through the emergency remote teaching and we're still in it, but I think in that initial semester or 2 last year, it was very hard. It was more like a pivot. Everyone talks about the pivot, and it was an emergency process. It wasn't like we had plenty of time to design our assessment tasks and talk to other people and, you know, really have this, you know, holistic approach to thinking of clever, you know, strong, robust assessment online. And so I think we need to give ourselves credit for the fact that we've actually been able to manage getting stuff online if we weren't used to it. But there still is some other things that we should do if we want to actually make the complete transition to best practice in online teaching. And I've just given you there a paper that we've just written and published in Assessment and Evaluation in Higher Ed, which talks about what 70 of our academics did through that initial stage in about June last year on how to address their teaching online. And interestingly, they also found that the focus and the thing that they missed the most was that engagement and interaction. And really for assessment, they just usually, unless they were already familiar with it, they usually just adapted their assessment tasks by weighting or by the style of engagement to go online rather than producing anything new. So we've done quite a bit of work in contract cheating, which I'll talk about a bit more just in a couple of slides. But when you've now got maybe a bit more space after the COVID rush pivot, I've just given some ideas there around assessment design for online learning. So the things I'm thinking about here are really the high stake assessment pieces. So perhaps not every piece that you've got for the students to do online is as important as other ones. So perhaps one with the highest weighting or one that's going to be linked to their accreditation or whatever is the ones that you consider. And it's already been mentioned about proctoring. So you may have the need for an examination and you might need it to be proctored. But another encouragement is really to think about using higher order thinking tasks. So let's make it a little bit more complex. Let's make it around analysis. So students will have to think about how they're going to actually answer the task and save them from being able to look just at Google or something else to get one correct answer. We've looked at adding extra steps. So maybe there's just that one extra thing, like a Zoom Fever, a short one, or a video they have to record. And it's more around the fact of what was their thinking in how creating the assessment task and their analysis skills in deciding what to put in and what not to, and the priorities. It also helps to actually link assessment to class content. And you can actually work in class on assignments. Now, I know we have a crowded curriculum often, but we have found that if you just start the work with the students, some students would then feel more comfortable in approaching the task and prioritize it rather than stressing and actually leaving it to the last minute. I think being available to students' questions is important as well. And to make sure that the students know the task clearly and the marking criteria, and do this at an early stage before it comes close to their submission point. And it's also good to actually talk with your tutors if you have them who are marking assignments, so they're on the same page as you are. And that's another paper we wrote earlier on, but it does give lists of types of things you can do in assessment to reduce cheating. The other thing that we found very useful is so as the course convener or the educator in charge of the class, we think you should talk to students about academic integrity and the way that that links between their professional integrity and personal integrity. Now, this comes from a set of slides. We just simply made like 5 slides and we had discussion starters for the educators so they could have this prompted discussion with their students. So, for example, you might use this at the beginning of the course or when just before the first assessment comes into play. We have a talk around the types of misconduct and what this might do for them in their studies. So we also tell them that the staff know that cheating occurs and we will be looking for it. A little bit around the risks. So what's going to happen to you if you buy a paper online? Well, we now know from some other research that students can be blackmailed for quite a long time after that and asked to pay money. But then, of course, there's also the institutional penalties that come into play. And the little link at the bottom, which you'll get because I've had is a blog that was just written by one of my colleagues yesterday, which talks more about that. So just quickly, detection and investigation using contract cheating as an example. And this is on the white part of this screen is the definition we use of contract cheating. So it's mainly around the student submitting work that's been completed by somebody else. So it's in the fact that they've actually submitted it as their own. And it doesn't matter whether that is a friend or the family, a family member, fellow students or staff members, or whether they've actually gone online and said, buy as an assignment. So we've taken a broad view of what contract cheating is. So this is the whole assessment task, not like plagiarism. Further, it's more serious than plagiarism if they just take snippets of things from other places. And you might be interested in how we've set up an investigation process for this. And it really starts with the marker. So sometimes course coordinators are the markers as well. But in other larger courses, we have tutors that actually do the marking. And we're very mindful that the tutors are contract or casual work people, sessionals who we don't want to labour with a lot of work to do around identifying contract cheating. But we do give them training very briefly about what to look for in a paper or what they're reading to see if there's some anomalies there and they have a hunch that it might be cheating. Then what happens is that the marker goes to their course coordinator, so the person in charge of the course, and they validate whether they think what the marker's suspicions were are correct. We also know that course coordinators have a lot of work to do, a lot of responsibility. So what we've tried to do here is we have an integrity officer in every school. So that's about 32 integrity officers, and that's a service role they have. And we provide them with more professional learning. So around authorship is a tool, a technology that you can use to compare a student's submissions in turn it in over time. And they'll conduct the preliminary investigation and prepare a report. Now, if it was plagiarism or collusion or something, it might go on a bit different path from here. But this, because it's more serious, so see level 2 or 3 in our schema, it will then go to a faculty level officer and they will decide about the report, should go to the decision maker, and they're the ones fairly high up in a school hierarchy of responsibility that will make the decision. So this is the sort of model that we've been working on. We give a lot of professional development in these 3 spaces.
Thank you, Ibu Christine. The time is up.
Okay, well, you'll be able to see everything else. That was the last slide anyway, so they'll be able to, you'll be able to look at that further detail. I've left the references on the end if you want them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I highlight an important point that when we design assessment, online assessment, we need to consider some of criteria. One of it is high order of thinking that can reduce the cheating, and also we need a strategy to deliver the regulation or the such as contract cheating. So thank you once again, Dr. Christine, for the sessions. Now, respectful people, we are going to have Indonesian perspective about assessment. The first speaker is Bapak Eka Pramono Adi. He's a lecturer of educational technology, Malang State University. And he is going to discuss about smart assessment in online learning. Pak Eka, you have 10 minutes for the screen. Pak Eka, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Luki.
Most welcome, Pak.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to have a chance to present to you all in this webinar. Now, okay. Can my screen is seen?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Can you make it bigger, sir? So present it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning. I'm in morning in Western time of Indonesia.
Yeah.
Okay. Online learning innovation beyond borderless as a reflection of independence in self-assessment of the contemporary generation era. Okay. I start with satisfaction of our generation. We all know that our generation is, this is known as instant generation. They are surrounded by technology. Some researchers have concluded there are technology devotees generation. So the assessment need to be facilitated by technology that able to make independence as the learner's performance. There are three aspects of three sides of this notion. First, they are scientists. They develop the theories based on issues. They produce studies and scientific references. Second is the developer. They raise ideas and construct some steps of assessment as the learning products. And the third is practitioner. They packaging it effectively, efficiently, and attractively to be utilized instantly by the learners. Okay. So I come from Department of Educational Technology, Faculty of Education. The educational technology for the nation, in our perspective, there are three generations. First generation is that the assessment is implemented by correspondency. Many years ago, by printing textbooks, printed modules, and so on. There are second generation that assessment is applied via the internet, example, email discussion, chatting, and so on. And the third generation, assessment is utilizing whatever things in the learning environment of a learner personally. Okay. Now, the independent of learning, or which is known as Merdeka Belajar in Bahasa Indonesia, we have some parts. There are self-regulated learning. This is assessment role to view the engagement of the learning participants. Second, we have self-directed learning, that assessment able to view learners' commitment. And the third, there are self-determined learning. There is self-determined learning, assessment to be able to view the courage of the learner to decide, to make a decision during their learning period. And the fourth, there is seamless learning, assessment no longer limited by formally, but can be done anytime, anywhere, with anything as needed, as a student or a student or a learner have a personal gadget, so they can use it anytime. And the fifth, there is personalized learning. There is assessment measure individual abilities and not to compare between individuals. Okay. Based on our research with my colleague, Dr. Henry, we have concluded that integrating collaboration technology with portfolio is an important thing. It's an important thing to minimize individual fraud. We mean fraud is cheating. Example of the implementation of monitoring collaboration and student portfolios through management software combined with Sipajar. In our university, we have a learning management system, which is known as Sipajar learning management. And in the system, we have a collaboration and portfolio. In collaboration side, peer assessment gives the role of colleges as partners, and in portfolio side, self-assessment provides reflection to each learner about their own abilities. Okay. Now we have to look at our philosophy or local wisdom. There are 4 things to underline. This is Taman Siswa, okay, trilogy, which is known as trilogy, found by Ki Hajar Dewantara in many years ago in 1930s. The first motto or first notion is Ingarso Sungtulodo. I'm sorry, in this in Japanese or Bahasa Jawa. In English, is both those in front should set an example. The teacher or lecturer gives example and assesses whether the examples can be applied. And the second is Ing Madyo Mangun Karso. In English, about for those in the middle should raise the spirit. In this notion, teacher or lecturer and students conduct peer assessment to see the effectiveness and efficiency of the project. And the third is Tut Muri Handayani. In English is for those behind should give encouragement. Every student do a self-assessment to explain the portfolio reflection. And the fourth, life-based independent learning. We also name LBL, life-based learning. Students are able to manage the learning environment and decide for themselves what needs to be applied in life. Okay. So this is the consequences of attention toward assessment development in online learning. We can see the picture, a figure. We can see that developing distance learning, there are 3 lines. First, revolution of learning and instruction, and then needs of contemporary generation. The second is anti-revolution of learning and instruction, and so they keep the status quo as generation transition. Okay, And the third line is gradation, improving and distance learning services. So the serving the generation needs with a local wisdom consideration. Okay. Now, the smart assessment non-learning, we can conclude that we need scaffolding. Okay, in scaffolding, the teacher provides scaffolding to make students independent in each stage of the assessment. And second, the independent learning is to make each assessment independent so that students are successful in collaborating according to their unique personal abilities. And the third is utagogi. Utagogi is a didactic approach as an entry point for student self-assessment so that students are successful in life through tacit knowledge. Within tacit knowledge is commitment, responsibility, work, ethic, etc. Okay, they are can develop helping learners to activate independence. Okay, thank you, Mr. Luki. This is all. I apologize if any words unpleasant you. Okay, assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
It's okay, sir. Thank you so much for being on time. And actually, you still have 1 minute, but it's done. And I can grab the message that students nowadays need to be very responsible toward their own learning. So I can call self-student-centered assessment. For example, the tools is making portfolio. So, and also peer assessment. Yeah? By doing so, you call that it is smart assessment. Thank you once again, Pak Eka Pramono, for the presentation. All right, the second one, will be interesting. The presenter is from Universitas Gajah Mada University, Yogyakarta, Dr. Sunu Wibirama. He is an assistant professor, Department of Electrical Engineering and Information Technology. So he is not from education, but from Department of Electrical Engineering. It will be interesting to hear his presentation about alternative to face-to-face assessment. For Pak Sunu, the screen is yours. 10 minutes, Pak.
Okay, Pak Luki, can you hear my voice?
Clearly, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me share my screen. Okay, so have you seen the presentations? Can you see the slides?
Yes, Mr. Sunu.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you very much, Pak Luki, and all of the speakers. Today I learned a lot from all of you, and I'm going to explain and tell a story about my experience in providing alternative to face-to-face assessments. Just like Dr. Luki said, I come from engineering background, not educational or pedagogical background. So perhaps this will be interesting for you who come from backgrounds other than educational or pedagogical technology. Okay, so before I explain my experience, I would like to present the results of survey. The survey was conducted by Center of Innovation and Academic Study from the UGM. And as you can see here, in March and April, we conducted a survey to more than 10,000 students. And as you can see in the slide, that actually we have quite a good experience in online learning activities, but you know that in the quality of assignment, we got a 3.37 out of 5. So we still need to improve how we conduct our evaluation or our assessment, so that as you may see previously, we can assess the students out of cheating or out of fraud. And if we talk about assessment, actually you have to separate the types of assessment based on what you want to assess. For example, if you want to assess the knowledge of the students, then you have to, provide assessment that based or centralized on the knowledge test. And if you want to assess on application of knowledge, then you have to, you have to try to create assessment so that students can apply the knowledge they get from the class. And then, of course, some courses they try to test, they try to assess the demonstration skills. So you have to develop assessment to know whether the students can have a good performance on the skill that they have learned in the class. And beyond all of that, of course, if you want to assess the professional practice, you have to create a holistic assessment. So it consists of performance, applied knowledge test, and the knowledge test itself. And the second one that you have to take into account when you want to design assessment is, of course, you have to look into your learning outcomes. And as you may know, a lot of universities in Indonesia already implement the OPE, the outcome-based education. And first, of course, you have to define the aim of your course itself, and then you define the learning outcomes, or CPMK in Indonesian term. And then after that, you align what you want to assess based on your learning outcome. And then after that, you decide what kind of learning and teaching activities that support the learning outcome. And of course, that will be assessed in future. So this is basically how we design the assessment. And actually, when we talk about OBE, or outcome-based educations, of course, we have to design assessment prior to conducting the teaching activities. So you provide the assessment first, you provide the design of assessment, you provide the document for assessment, and then you conduct the teaching and learning activities. And as you may see, actually, when we talk about assessment, you already seen from the previous presenters, there are a lot of assessment. In particular, when you heard from the Australian presenters, you got a lot of information about how to do the face-to-face assessment through the poster presentations, to the short FIFA from Zoom or synchronous software. But here we would like to present our experience on how to do a non-face-to-face assessment. And of course, you have to consider not only the immediacy of the assessment, but also the capacity of your internet bandwidth. For example, if you have good connections, if you have a good internet connection and your students as well, then you can do like a recorded video presentations, just like what I'm going to present in the next slides. But if your students do not have good internet connections, or they are staying in rural areas or remote areas, then of course you have to adjust type of assessment. And what we are currently doing in our university is we combine both of recorded video presentations and the audio in PDF of presentation, so that the size of the files for assessment is not too big, and the students can send or can transfer the files through email or e-learning system. Okay, so as for the case study, I would like to explain about our course. I taught this course in the previous semester. This is artificial intelligence course for undergraduate level. You can find the video online in YouTube. I already uploaded all of the video lectures there, and you can see all of the materials. But for the assessment, we provide a specialized online learning platform. We use the UGM online platform. It's called ELOC. It's basically based on Moodle. And we have here 3 learning outcomes. So the first learning outcomes is students are able to understand and to articulate basic concept of AI and knowledge-based system. And the second one, students are able to understand and to apply computational concept of fuzzy system, genetic algorithm, and deep learning. And the third learning outcome is students are able to understand and to implement selected techniques of machine learning through Python programming. So as you may see here, that out of 3 learning outcomes, we have 2 outcomes that are practically based on knowledge, like understand or apply. But for the third learning outcomes, it is a practical, it's like a demonstration skills. The students have to demonstrate their skills, and then we have to assess the skill itself. And for the first and the second learning outcomes, we assess the students through online assessments such as quizzes and written assessment. And then for the third learning outcome, we have 2 assessments. The first is individual assignment, just like Pak Eka said, we have independent learning there. So we encourage the students to learn outside our class, and then to take online examination in the learning in the separate learning platform, and then to prove that they already complete the assignment by uploading the certificate. I will show you later on. And then we have also the group assignments, which is like a small project to implement machine learning techniques with Python programming in a predefined data that we provide to the student. Okay, so this is for this first and the second learning outcomes. As you may see here, we use our online learning platform. It's ELOC based on Moodle. So we create an online quiz here. Not only one actually, but for the sake of simplicity, we only present one screen capture here, so the students can implement what they got in class, and then they try to, choose one answer from multiple choices and answers. And then we also provided written assessment. This is for the midterm examinations. So the students have to answer some questions, and then they have to analyze some cases in the written assessment. And for the third learning outcomes, just like I said before, we have 2 kind of assessment here. The first assessment is the students were asked to finish 3 courses from a third-party learning platform. We use a DataCamp platform. This is a commercial platform, but we have a collaboration with the DataCamp, so we can get a premium access to the system, and then the students can register as a member in a team, and then they can choose some courses that we already selected previously. And then the task that we gave to the students, they had to finish the course, the 3 courses in a certain period of time. And then after they finish these courses, they had to upload it. They had to upload the certificates to their LinkedIn account. So they had to create a LinkedIn account, and then they had to upload the credentials of the certificate so that they can so that LinkedIn can validate the certificate, and then it can create based on the timeliness of finishing these 3 courses. And then for the group assignment, we assign a small programming project to the students, and then the students should submit online presentations. This is what I call perhaps similar like a small Viva that Dr. Christine already told you before. But here we ask the students to send the recorded video, so that we know how they analyze the problem, how they went through the solution to to solve the problem, etc., etc. And then of course they they also have to submit the code, so that we can assess whether they can solve the problem correctly. Okay, I think this is the final slide. Beside assignment, I think you have to submit feedback to the students, because this is the most important one. So if you have a lot of assignments, I think you have to do a lot of works, because you have to give them feedback so that they can improve their their skills, they
Competencies.
can, yes, they can improve their competencies later on. Thank you very
Right.
much, Pak Lucky.
Thank you,
I
sir.
hope this will be useful for you.
Thank you, and for everybody here as well. So, Mr. Sunu promoting the competency-based assessment, I think, based on OBE philosophy, outcome-based education philosophy. And he is also mentioning that when we are designing the assessment, we need to consider the learning outcomes, which is really important before we creating the indicators or the criteria, and also the task itself. So it should be aligned from learning outcome, the criteria of the assessment, and also the task. So thank you once again, Pak Sunu, for the presentation. The last presentation, oh, sorry. The next presentation will be Dr. Gatot Fatwanto Hertono. He is a Director of Academic Development and Learning Resources, Universitas Indonesia. Dr. Gatot is going to deliver a topic, engagement in online assessment. 10-minute screen is yours, Dr. Gatot.
Okay, thank you, Pak Lucky. Let me share my screen first. Okay. Can you see the slide, Pak Lucky? Okay, yeah. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for thank you for the opportunity given to me in this webinar. So in this session, I will share our experience in UI about how to make student engagement in online assessment, especially what we have done in implementing case-based and project-based learning. So why I like to explain about the case-based and project-based learning. So I will tell later. Okay, so as we know that actually many methods can be used in online assessments. Right now, most learning management system have various features for assessment or online tests. For example, in Moodle, we can find features to provide multiple choice question, short answer, and essay. But online assessment is also can be done in the form of a project or e-portfolio or presenting computer simulation. And we know that similar to the assessment on face-to-face learning, then we can also conduct an assessment by considering such as student participation and also competence in soft skill or hard skills. And from the aspect of the instruments, I think in assessment, as we have also in face-to-face learning, we can also use like a rubric or a logbook or a student report or a student portfolio to assess student performance in achieving learning outcomes. But in this session, I will not discuss all of this type of assessment, but I would like to share our experience related to assessment that can be carried in case-based or project-based learning. So we all know that since the pandemic last year, many higher education institutions have had to run online learning. Some of them have to run it fully online, and the rest have to run it in blended mode. But on the other hand, in 2019, in order to support higher education transformation, the ministry has also launched a program known known as Merdeka Belajar Campus Merdeka. So I think previously Prof. Bin already mentioned about this. So this is a new program. Then it's supposed to be support the university to get the transformation in higher education. And in this case, to support the Merdeka Belajar, the key performance indicators are set to for all university of in Indonesia. And one of the indicators here, as I showed in the red box here, is related to the application of collaborative and participatory classes, where the evaluation is based on project-based learning and also case-based learning. And I think if we refer to the KPI, most of university in Indonesia should get a target about 35% of the total courses should be implemented in those two methods. And that's why I would share on how we do in UI online assessment on the project-based learning and case-based learning. We know that the case-based learning and also the project-based learning actually is a part of the student-centered learning, where student engagement is the key to success. So here, as an example, I show that there is an assessment strategy that we apply in a general course at the university level in UI that show that the course is designed as a case-based learning. So we can see here, student can, during the learning process, they can looking for the content or the material related to the topics that is assigned in MOOCs or open education resources. They can choose freely. And then after that, they have to write down a report and also self-reflection into a portfolio. So in this case, the lecturer or facilitator will assess based on the portfolio submitted by the student. So this is happened in last semester in general course in UIs, like in national ideology, we call it Pancasila, and also civic or queer kewarganegaraan. So this is one kind of assessment strategy that we implement in case-based learning. And the next example, we also apply the case-based learning. And in this example, I take from the course in the Department of Mathematics. It's related to the mathematics modeling. So here the lecturer first, the lecturer explained about some cases that should be solved by the student. So the student can interact with the lecturers through synchronous mode like Zoom or Microsoft Teams application, and then each group I mean that the lecturers give several places and distribute to several groups in the class, and each group and a facilitator discusses the solution of a give either synchronous or asynchronous using the learning management system, or synchronous using online meeting application. And after that, the result of the discussion were developed by each students independently, I mean that individually. And these two process can be carried out iteratively. So after the student finish to do their job, they can go back to the discussion with the group, and then in the group they can try to find out the solution of the cases. And after they finish the result, or they already find the model or the output of the cases, the student must make a group presentation and also make a report. So here, student activity during the discussion, and also student contribution, and also the quality of presentation, and also their report. So this is the assessment that is conducted by the lecturer. And in case of the project-based learning, similar to case-based learning, assessment in project-based learning also focuses on student activity and also student engagement. So as part of the course, students are given a project to do, and then during the project, a facilitator will accompany its group. And in some cases, sometimes they have to go to one place to do the project. So it should be do in like in face-to-face or in offline. And then each group of the discussion were developed individually. So after they after they discuss, they can continue with individual work, and this process also can be iterated. They can go back to the group or the forum to discuss more about the project. And to show the output or a product, each group have to present a demo or a result of their work. So using a synchronous presentation using like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, each group has to present their product or their a demo of their product, and to show the result of their work. And similar to this, the other strategy, so in this case, a lecturer will assess student activity during doing the project, and also during the discussion, their contribution, and also quality of product and or reports. So this is related to the project-based learning assessment.
Cut out the time, Pak.
Okay, yeah. So this is the final slide. So what to assess? So we can see most strategy assess student activity in discussion, involvement in working on project, and the quality of the output of they produce. But it doesn't mean that what I show here is the only way to assess online in case-based or project-based learning. We can develop other forms of assessment or add other assessment component as needed.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you.
So back to you, Pak Luti.
Thank you so much, Pak Gatot, for sharing the best practice on collaborative and case-based assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, the last speaker will be Professor Dr. Dean Wahyudin. He is Professor of Curriculum Development, Curriculum and Educational Technology, Faculty of Education, Indonesia University of Education. Professor Dean is going to discuss about measuring outcomes and learner achievement in online programs. The 10 minutes screen is yours, Pak Dean.
Okay, thank you very much, Brother Luki, Mas Luki, for letting me to have present my topic to be discussed in this event. It is my honor to have opportunity to share with our colleague from Australian University as well as from Indonesian University. Let's I share my screen. Why sorry, yeah. Sorry. Here. I still have problem with the assessment. Hopefully it can be seen my screen. Can you see? Pak Luki, can you see my screen?
We saw the final
but
manager, Pak, not your
You need to
presentation.
present. You need to present it, sir.
Yes, it can be seen.
Yes.
Your screen can be seen, but not your PPT, not your PowerPoint.
Okay. I have little problem with my present, what my paper. Okay. Gimana ini? Tidak bisa kelihatan. It cannot be seen there.
Stop screen dulu, Pak. Nanti masuk ke itunya, Pak.
Okay, stop screen. I have done it. Actually, I have prepared it. Okay.
Open your presentation first, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Hopefully it can be seen.
Not yet.
Yes.
Not yet?
Yes, sir. I can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for opportunity to present my paper. I begin this presentation with two inspiring quotes. Hopefully, it will inspire us why we are having discussion today. First, I take from John Cowan. He was a United Kingdom lecturer in the United Kingdom, and the topic is, but the assessment is the engine which drives student learning. So all of the presenter agree that assessment is the engine. It is very important part of the total student learning. So the assessment should be put into the most considered things. Secondly, fortunately, Professor Henderson, one of the presenter today, I have learned some paper from him, and I took a quote from his research. Assessment feedback for learning is the key, is a linchpin to student effective decision making and the basis of improved learning outcome. However, according to him, feedback is underutilized and often misunderstood by both students and some educators. So here is the two quotes I take in line with my presentation. So according to my topic is concerning with measuring outcome and learner achievement in online learning programs. First, I talk firstly about the assessment and relation with MBKM. It has been mentioned, but with our directors, that MBKM, Freedom to Learn Independent Campus, is one program launched by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Research, and Technology to improve the country education system, especially in higher education program. And in terms of curriculum planning, talking about assessment, the program consists of 4 components. So goals, first goal shall be accomplished. Secondly, essential learning content. And the third concerning with delivery system. And the last one, assessment shall be conducted. So our discussion for today mostly talk about the assessment. I would do underline that if we talk about assessment, it should be considered with others component of curriculum. There is the goal, essential content learning, and delivery system. In this brief presentation, I will discuss the role of assessment as one a very important component in curriculum in measuring outcome and learning achievement. I took the definition of curriculum related with the assessment in according with the law number 11 year 20 and 11 section 345. The curriculum is higher education. Curriculum is set and of plan and arrangement for goal, content, material of teaching, and how they are used as the basis of learning activities. So the point here, when we talk about assessment, we talk about the plan and arrangement of the curriculum. Firstly, we should consider what goal, what the purpose, what competencies shall be achieved in online program. So it has close relation with the third one, about the last one about assessment. Secondly, about content and material, and the third about how the material should be delivered effectively even in COVID-19 period. Now, in this case, I believe that assessment is a very critical component of the online classroom, as it has been presented clearly with our previous presenter. It provides students with ideas of their progress in a course, identifies individual strengths and weaknesses, might be about the cheating and something unfair activities, and ultimately serve as the measure of whether students achieve on course learning objective. So although this characteristic serve a valuable instructional and pedagogical function, it is important that the assessment engage students and prepare them with the skill they need in the future course, especially in practicum and even in their career for future work in the future time after they have graduated. I also mentioned two basic type of student assessment in online teaching learning activities in higher education. Firstly, formative assessment occur within an online course or lesson and are used to determine how well student has learned. They are best when they are ongoing, consistent, and provide critical feedback. Secondly, the assessment is intended for summative assessment. It is referred as a final exam and measure what student has learned after completing the course. They can validate how well your content support to the course. Some of discussion has been discussed in depth by previous presenter. But the point is, formative assessment is very important as a part of learning process in order to improve the process of learning conducted by the student even in online program. While summative assessment is for decision in order to have grade after completing the course. Okay, I will let the others. Now, when we talk about curriculum component relating with the assessment in online program, it can be seen here the relationship between goal competencies should be achieved. also contained with graduate profile, learning outcome. It has been already done by our university, by individual lecturers. Essential content, I mean, the teacher, the lecturer should carefully choose what essential content should be put on the program of online program. And the third one is delivery system. What method and strategies of learning should be conducted even on online project. And the last one is the assessment itself. Measuring learning outcome, it consists of type of assessment as it has been presented by previous lecturers, formative and summative, and it can be test and no test. And portfolio is also one of the summative done by our lecturers. Because
your time, sir.
Okay, the last one. Okay, the final remark. So here is the way to access student learning on online program. Taken from online quiz, say question, drag and drop activities, and online interview, dialogue simulation, online game types activities. The last one, final remark. So again, I conclude that assessment in online program is a very critical component on online. It provides students with ideas, weakness, and we can measure the achievement of student learning objective. Secondly, assessment feedback is very important for learning, as it has been mentioned by our colleague, Professor previously, that effective decision making and the basis of improving outcome. Learning assessment standards are minimum criteria for student learning process and outcome. It also can be implemented in online program. Last but not least, assessment tool, as it has been presented by previous presenter, that allow us as a lecturer, as teachers, to generate engaging tasks for online assessment. So the point is how we appropriate way to assess students, so we can see, how the importance of assessment in order to see the progress of student learning. Thank you very much. Hopefully it is very important for us. Thank you very much. Pak Luki, thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Din Wahyudin, for the presentation. Respectful audience, I would like to ask another 10 minutes for the question and answer sessions. Since we only have very limited time, so I would like to read 2 questions only, and then let the speaker answer the questions. Beside all the speakers, we also have Dr. Jasmine Thomas as the panelist. She is the Associate Director, Academic Integrity, Academic Transformative Portfolio, University of Southern Queensland. So I would like to choose a question from Ibu Novi Ramadhani. She's a student. Yeah, she is a student. The questions goes to Mr. Michael Ewing, and the questions are: what are student problems that usually occurs when studying online, and how can actually be involved with student distant learning during the current COVID-19 pandemic? Once again, Dr. Michael Ewing, what are student problems that usually occurs when studying online, and how can faculty be involved with student distance learning during the current COVID-19 pandemic?
All right, thank you. Thank you, Pak Luki, and thank you for that question. I think for me personally, as an instructor working with students online, the biggest problem I find is the engagement of the students in real time during a class, because so many students want to have their cameras off, and it's very difficult to get the feedback from them. In a classroom, you can see how students are engaged. You can walk up to them, talk to them individually if it's a small class, but on a Zoom, in a Zoom environment, the few very active students will be very engaged, and it is quite difficult to draw out the other students. And so finding ways to do that is probably the way to get around that challenge. It's very hard. It's something I talk with a lot of colleagues about. I think working in breakout rooms, giving them very concrete tasks to work on in breakout rooms, and then moving between the rooms yourself as an instructor is useful. Also, being very clear on tasks, sort of like I was talking about, tasks that really engage students, in which to complete the task in class, they have to produce something, some sort of analysis or commentary, and come back and report on it. Maybe when I put people into groups, I ask them to nominate one spokesperson, so we know when we come back together to discuss things that that person will speak. So I'm not just saying, does anybody have any ideas? And there's just blank silence, which can often happen in Zoom classrooms. So it's thinking through classroom activities that are engaging and finding techniques to bring students in. Just off the top of my head, those would be the things I would say right off. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Pak Ewing, Pak Thomas. Dr. Jasmine, are you here? Do you want to add some more?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. And thank you for the question. I think that Michael has said a fantastic approach to that question, because you're right, engagement can be exceptionally difficult when we're doing online teaching. And it's when students are disengaged that we find that the pressures that they're facing increases, which then can contribute to academic integrity being compromised. So my recommendation for staff is, of course, to engage in those activities that were spoken about previously, but also for students to be willing to participate and get the most out of their classes, because it's only through that then that they can gain the confidence so that they maintain the integrity of their assessments.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Dr. Jasmine. The second question goes to Pak Sunu Wibirama from Sriani Stimik Handayani. He is a lecturer, and the question is, for the third learning outcome, your students were required to complete 3 related courses. 3 related courses and uploaded the certificate. Wait, I cannot see the questions. Are those, I cannot see the question, sir, but that's the statement from the questioner. Maybe Pak Sunu can answer the statement, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, basically we have, yeah, can you hear my voice?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, basically we were 3 lecturers in this class, and all of us already agreed that the student itself should have a basic competencies, and we require the student to have a programming competencies, because they will use this competency to solve the problem in the group assignment. So all of them should complete 3 courses. Actually, it's a very basic courses regarding the programming using Python, and a basic machine learning course. And they have to complete within a period of time, like 2 weeks. So they have to complete within 2 weeks, and then they submit the certificates to the teaching assistant. And then we also created them based on the punctuality of the students when submitting the certificates and uploading the credentials in LinkedIn account. That's what we were doing during the course. So to make sure that they have basic competencies, just like that.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to say thank you to all participants who have already shared the questions, but I'm afraid I could not read one by one since the time. But again, by giving the questions, I think we need to appreciate your engagement to the seminar. So once again, thank you, Bapak Ibu and ladies and gentlemen, for this the time, and I will give the screens to Ibu Rasya.
Thank you, Mr. Lucky
Thank you,
Cahyana
Pak Lucky.
Subadi, for being a great moderator for today's agenda. We have so many questions, but unfortunately, we have a very limited time. Okay, and then about the presentations of all the speakers, we will upload it. I've already read the chat box. Many participants ask about the materials. We are going to upload it on Spada Indonesia website. Okay, spada.kemdikbud.go.id, or you may Google it. And we have already provided questionnaires of knowledge management on the chat box, or we are going to share the questionnaire of knowledge management on the chat box. We ask for your willingness of all the participants to fill in the questionnaires on the chat box. Okay. The honorable ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the agenda. Australia-Indonesia Virtual Online Higher Education Policy Dialogue, Assessment, Evaluation, Integrity in Online Learning. But before we end the agenda, we will hear the closing remarks first from Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning. To Ms. Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning, the screen is yours.
Thank you. I will be very quick because I know we've taken up a lot of your time today. It's been such interesting content. And whilst this webinar is at a close and this series is at a close, our conversation is not at a close. And the number of your questions just makes it clear how much appetite there is for continued dialogue on this topic, but also the other topics that we've had in this webinar series as well. So my sincere thanks to you all, to speakers, to panelists, to our partners in the government of Indonesia. This has been a real group effort, but I especially want to single out our speakers and panelists. They are the experts on these topics, and I think you've done an absolutely outstanding job in sharing your expertise on all of these different aspects on the design and delivery of online higher education. And I really hope that this isn't the end. I hope that we can build on this webinar, not only in our government-to-government relationship, but in our institutional partnerships and the conversations that happen between Australian universities and Indonesian universities also. So I do encourage you to keep the dialogue going, to reach out to the speakers from both Australia and Indonesia, to rewatch the webinars on Spada and other platforms, because we still have a lot to do in this space and a lot to learn as well. And there's always more opportunity to learn, and I think there's very good reason to do so, because it's going to directly benefit our students, our lecturers, our institutions. And with that, I will say once again, sincerely thank you. Until next time, sampai jumpa lagi.
Sampai jumpa lagi, Miss Elizabeth Campbell-Dorning. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you for all the speakers and also all the participants who already attend via video conference or YouTube channel. We hope this meeting will bring the mutual benefits between Indonesia and Australia and gives us a chance to carry out all the suitable strategy on developing the capacity of the academic community, especially on online learning. Thank you for your attention. Final words, I say have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bu Ratia, Pak
Thank
Luki,
you.
Pak Eka,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
ya,
Thank you.
semuanya.
Terima
Pak
kasih
Suno, thank you, Pak.
Michael, Ewing.
Profesor
Terima kasih Pak
Dean,
Luki.
thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Prof. Dean. Thank you.
Great
Pak Eka, thank you,
cooperation.
Pak
Terima
Eka.
kasih Pak.
Thank you for
Pak
all.
Gatot, thank you.
Thank you.
Ya,
Bye
thank you very
bye.
much.
Pak Michael, thank you, Pak Michael.
Thank you. Ya.
Thank
Di
you.
Michael, thank you very much.
spada.kemdikbud.go.id ya, Bapak Ibu. Nanti silakan masuk di fitur workshop atau seminar. Akan ada pilihan untuk Australia seminar, jadi materi bisa di-download dari fitur tersebut. Terima kasih.
Ibu Yulita, would you please share also all the questions to all the speakers because they need to know.
Yes, we will share the question to Bu Claudina,
Yes.
sorry.
Because
So,
every speaker get the question actually,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I'm sorry I cannot read one by
And
one.
it will be helpful
That's
if
okay. We can pass.
we got the feedback from the speakers regarding the question from the participants, so we can also share the question from the speakers through our website. Thank you.
Oke, thank you Bu Yulita.
Thank you.
Pak Adin, Pak
I leave,
Luki.
I leave the
thank
screen
you
ya.
very
Thank
much.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Ya,
I leave the
semuanya.
screen. Bye.
Leave.
Mas Agus, roomnya
Okay,
bisa
thank you
ditutup.
everybody.
Terima
See you
kasih.
next time.
Thank you.
Ya.
Oke, terima kasih. Tutup ya.